Millionaire CEO, paralyzed and infertile, but one night of passion with her healed him and gave him miracle triplets. A powerful CEO who saved a child's life lies broken in a hospital bed. Doctors say he'll never walk again, never father children. His wife abandons him when he needs her most. Enter a brilliant neurologist with revolutionary methods and unwavering determination. She sees beyond his injury to the man beneath. Despite professional boundaries, their connection grows with each therapy session, culminating in one passionate night that changes everything. Welcome back to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips, where we explore extraordinary love stories that defy all odds. Today's story will take you on an emotional journey of healing, betrayal, and miraculous new beginnings. Before we continue, I'd love to hear your thoughts on impossible love. Have you ever witnessed a connection so powerful it seemed to defy medical science? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you're new here, join our growing family by hitting that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss our daily episodes of heart-touching stories that remind us of love's transformative power. Now, let's dive into this remarkable tale of a man who found healing in the most unexpected way. The morning newspapers all carried the same headline: Cole Enterprises CEO critically injured in heroic rescue. Ethan Cole had been attending the grand opening of a bridge his company had funded, a routine public appearance that turned catastrophic when structural supports failed. In that critical moment, Ethan didn't hesitate. Security footage captured him lunging forward to push a young boy to safety before the section collapsed. The child survived without a scratch. Ethan plummeted 30 feet into the rocky riverbed below. Now, 3 months later, Ethan lay in his luxury hospital suite, staring at the ceiling. The doctors had been brutally honest: T10 spinal cord injury. Complete paralysis below the waist. The chances of walking again? Virtually none. "Mr. Cole, your wife is here," announced the nurse, her voice artificially bright. Vanessa Cole entered, designer heels clicking against the tile floor. Her beauty remained flawless, golden hair perfectly styled, makeup impeccable, but her eyes held something cold as she regarded her husband. "The lawyers need your signature," she said without preamble, placing documents on his bedside table. "Divorce papers?" "No." Ethan's voice was rough from disuse. "It's been 3 months since the accident, Vanessa." 3 months. She adjusted her diamond bracelet, avoiding his gaze. "Be realistic, Ethan. This isn't what I signed up for. The board is already pushing you out. Your physical condition," she gestured vaguely at his legs, "this changes everything." "Till death do us part," he reminded her bitterly. "We both know our marriage was more about convenience than love," Vanessa replied, her tone businesslike. "I've been generous in the settlement. You keep the house in Greenwich. I get the Manhattan apartment and the villa in Positano." Ethan turned away, jaw clenched. "Just leave the papers." After she departed, he pressed the morphine button, welcoming the momentary escape it provided. In the haze of medication, he confronted the brutal truth. He had sacrificed everything for a stranger's child and lost his entire life in return. The following week brought another blow. His fertility specialist, Dr. Harrison, delivered news that shattered what little hope remained. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. The trauma and high-dose medications have caused permanent damage. You'll never father children." Ethan received this information with hollow laughter. "Perfect. Anything else you'd like to take from me?" Dr. Harrison looked uncomfortable. "We've consulted multiple specialists. The diagnosis is conclusive. Send the reports to my assistant," Ethan replied dismissively. "I'm sure they'll make fascinating reading alongside the divorce proceedings and board takeover documents." As weeks passed, Ethan withdrew further. Nurses whispered about the bitter man in the VIP suite who refused visitors and barely spoke during therapy sessions. The renowned CEO who once commanded boardrooms now couldn't even command his own body. Word spread through medical circles, Ethan Cole was impossible to work with. 3 physical therapists had already requested reassignment. His case was becoming notorious. Dr. Maxwell Porter, head of neurology, reviewed Ethan's file with growing concern. His physical condition isn't improving because he's given up, he explained to his team. We need someone who can reach him psychologically as well as medically. What about Dr. Hart, suggested a resident. Her work with trauma patients has shown remarkable results. Porter considered this. Her methods are unconventional. But effective, the resident pressed. Didn't her last patient regain partial mobility after everyone else had given up? Porter nodded slowly. Contact her. See if she's interested in taking on this case. Dr. Lila Hart was in her research laboratory when the call came. At 32, she had already pioneered techniques that were revolutionizing spinal rehabilitation. Her approach combined intensive physical therapy with neural stimulation methods that were just beginning to gain recognition in mainstream medicine. Looking through Ethan Cole's file that evening, Lila found herself intrigued. Beyond the medical charts and progression notes lay a story of a man who had acted instinctively to save a child, sacrificing himself without hesitation. That spoke to character that contradicted the difficult patient described in the notes. The next morning, Lila stood outside Ethan's hospital room, taking a deep breath before entering. She had built her career on helping patients others had given up on. But something told her this case would challenge her in ways she couldn't anticipate. She knocked and entered without waiting for a response. Ethan sat in his wheelchair by the window, his once powerful frame noticeably thinner, dark hair longer than the corporate cut from his news photos. The room felt oppressive despite its luxury, blinds half-drawn, air stagnant with hopelessness. Mr. Cole, she said clearly, I'm Dr. Lila Hart. I'll be taking over your rehabilitation program starting today. He turned, eyes cold with resigned hostility. Congratulations on drawing the short straw, doctor. How long before you request a transfer to? Lila didn't flinch at Ethan's hostility. Instead, she moved closer, her clipboard tucked under her arm, and studied him with clinical precision. Your file says you've had minimal progress with conventional therapy, she said, her voice matter-of-fact. I don't do conventional, Mr. Cole. And what exactly do you do, Dr. Hart? Ethan asked, sarcasm dripping from each word. I help people find possibilities where others see dead ends. She pulled up a chair, sitting directly across from him. But my methods only work if you're willing to participate fully. Are you? Ethan laughed hollowly. Participate in what? Another round of false hope? I've had 6 doctors tell me I'll never walk again. I'm not here to contradict their diagnosis, Lila replied calmly. I'm here to explore what recovery might look like for you within the constraints of your injury. Recovery, he echoed bitterly. My wife left. My company pushed me out. The board that I handpicked voted unanimously to replace me. What exactly am I recovering toward, doctor? Lila leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. That's not for me to answer. But I refuse to believe a man who threw himself in harm's way to save a child has nothing left to live for. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, the first genuine emotion beyond bitterness. You've done your homework. Thoroughly, she confirmed. We start tomorrow, 8 a.m. Wear comfortable clothes, not hospital gowns. Before he could object, she was gone, leaving behind a faint scent of citrus and the unsettling feeling that his carefully constructed wall of isolation had just been breached. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the rehabilitation room expecting another futile session of basic movements and patronizing encouragement. Instead, he found the space transformed. Specialized equipment he didn't recognize lined the walls, and at the center stood Lila, dressed in athletic wear rather than a lab coat. We'll begin with a comprehensive reassessment, she announced without preamble. I need to understand exactly what we're working with. What followed was the most thorough examination Ethan had experienced since his injury. Lila's hands moved with confident precision as she tested neural responses, muscle tone, and sensation thresholds. Her touch was clinical but gentle, her focus absolute. You're feeling something here, she observed when he flinched slightly as her fingers pressed a point above his knee. Pressure, not pain, Ethan clarified, surprised himself. Lila made a note. That's significant. Your previous evaluations indicated no sensation below the injury site. For the first time, a flicker of interest broke through Ethan's resignation. What does it mean? It means we have something to work with, she replied, her eyes meeting his with quiet intensity. The body has wisdom beyond what medical textbooks capture. Sometimes it finds pathways we don't expect. Over the following weeks, Lila pushed Ethan through a grueling regimen unlike anything he'd experienced. Each session combined targeted electrical stimulation with innovative physical manipulations designed to reawaken dormant neural pathways. The pain was often excruciating, but Ethan found himself returning each day, driven by something he couldn't name. You're not giving up today, Lila insisted one afternoon when Ethan's frustration reached its peak after repeated failed attempts to activate his quadriceps muscles. This is pointless, he growled, sweat dripping down his face. Nothing about this is pointless, she countered, kneeling to meet his eyes. 3 weeks ago, you had no sensory response below mid-thigh. Now you're registering pressure down to your knees. That's miraculous progress for an irreversible condition. Their gazes locked in silent confrontation. Ethan was the first to look away. One more set, he conceded reluctantly. Lila nodded, her expression softening. One more. Then we try something new tomorrow. The something new turned out to be hydrotherapy. In the buoyancy of warm water, Ethan experienced his body differently, lighter, more responsive. With Lila's support, he found himself standing, the water bearing most of his weight but his legs trembling with the unfamiliar demand. I'm standing, he whispered, disbelief coloring his voice. Yes, you are, Lila confirmed, her smile radiant with shared triumph. Her hands steadied him at the waist, the professional touch feeling suddenly more intimate in the enclosed pool area. As weeks turned to months, their sessions developed a rhythm, punctuated by small victories that would have seemed insignificant to anyone else but represented massive breakthroughs to them both. A toe movement. Extended standing time in the hydrotherapy pool. The first assisted step between parallel bars. Gradually, Ethan began sharing pieces of himself beyond his medical condition, his childhood in Michigan, his rise through the business world, his private dreams of family that now seemed permanently beyond reach. The infertility diagnosis was almost worse than the paralysis, he admitted during a particularly grueling session. I always thought I'd have time for a family later, after building the company. Lila's hands paused briefly in their work. Medical science is constantly evolving, Ethan. Nothing is truly definitive. 3 specialists confirmed it, he said flatly. The medication cocktail they used during the first month destroyed whatever chance I had. And yet here you are, moving muscles they said would never respond again, she reminded him gently. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a recognition of connection that transcended the professional relationship they'd carefully maintained. For a heartbeat, neither spoke, the air charged with unacknowledged possibility. Lila broke the moment first, stepping back slightly. Let's try those parallel bars again. I think you're ready for 2 consecutive steps today. But as Ethan positioned himself at the bars, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed, not just in his body's response to treatment, but in his heart's response to the woman determined to help him heal. 6 months into Ethan's treatment, the changes were remarkable. Gone was the bitter shell of a man who had greeted Lila on that first day. In his place was someone who fought for every millimeter of progress with determined focus. Someone who had begun to look forward rather than backward. The physical changes were equally noteworthy. Ethan had regained substantial upper body strength. With assistive devices, he could stand for short periods and take several supported steps. His sensory function had returned to mid-calf level, defying all initial prognosis. The board wants me to present your case at the International Neurology Conference, Lila mentioned one afternoon as they finished a particularly successful session. Your progress exemplifies the effectiveness of my neural regeneration protocol. Ethan toweled sweat from his face, considering her words. As your anonymous success story, I assume? Patient confidentiality would be maintained, yes. She hesitated, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Unless you'd prefer I decline. No, Ethan decided, surprising himself. Use my case. If it helps others like me, that's something worthwhile coming from this mess. Lila's smile was brilliant. Thank you. That means more than you know. Their eyes held for a moment too long, a growing occurrence that neither acknowledged aloud. Later that week, Ethan invited Lila to dinner at his home, framing it as a celebration of his latest milestone, standing unassisted for 30 seconds. It's not exactly protocol, she hedged, though her expression revealed her internal conflict. It's just dinner, Doctor, Ethan replied with the hint of a smile. Consider it a thank you from a grateful patient. They both knew it was more, but the fiction gave them permission to accept what they wanted. Ethan's Greenwich mansion reflected his pre-accident life, imposing architecture, museum-quality art, spaces designed to impress rather than comfort. Yet the small sunroom where he had dinner arranged felt different, intimate, with soft lighting and views of the garden illuminated by strategic landscape lighting. My housekeeper prepared everything, Ethan explained as Lila admired the elegant table setting. One advantage of wealth, competent staff who don't ask questions. Lila accepted the glass of wine he offered, noting how smoothly he navigated his kitchen in his wheelchair. You've adapted well to home life. I've had modifications made, he acknowledged. Necessity drives innovation. Over dinner, their conversation flowed beyond the usual parameters of treatment goals and physical benchmarks. They discovered shared passions for classical music, adventure travel, and surprisingly, botanical gardens. I wouldn't have pegged the mighty CEO as someone who appreciates flowers, Lila teased, her cheeks flushed from wine and comfortable conversation. There's a lot about me that might surprise you, Ethan replied, his voice dropping slightly. The accident changed more than my physical capabilities. It forced me to reevaluate everything. How so? She asked, genuinely curious. When you lose what defines you, in my case, mobility, power, my company, you discover what remains. His eyes held hers across the table. The core of who you are without the trappings. And what did you discover? Lila found herself leaning closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. That I want different things now. Meaningful things. His hand moved across the table, fingers stopping just short of hers. Connection. Purpose. Legacy that isn't measured in fiscal quarters. The air between them changed, charged with unspoken possibility. We should probably review tomorrow's therapy plan, Lila said softly, making one last attempt to maintain professional boundaries even as her heart raced. Probably, Ethan agreed, not moving. Outside, rain began to fall, droplets pattering against the glass ceiling of the sunroom. The sudden storm created a cocoon around them, separating their moment from the world beyond. I should go, Lila whispered, yet remained seated. Or you could stay, Ethan suggested, vulnerability plain in his face. Not as my doctor. Just as yourself, Lila. Her name on his lips broke something loose inside her, a dam of professional restraint crumbling under the weight of feelings she'd fought for months. This would change everything, she warned, even as she rose and moved around the table. It already has, he replied simply. When their lips finally met, it felt like an inevitability, a moment they had been moving towards since that first challenging session. Her hands cupped his face as his arms pulled her closer, the kiss deepening from tentative exploration to hungry certainty. Later, in his bedroom, Lila helped Ethan navigate the physical challenges of intimacy with the same focused care she brought to his therapy, but now infused with desire that transformed clinical knowledge into passionate connection. His body responded in ways medical science had deemed impossible, their union transcending the limitations of his injury. In the quiet aftermath, rain still drumming against the windows, they lay entwined in sheets that bore witness to boundaries irreversibly crossed. "I've never felt this alive," Ethan murmured against her shoulder. "Not even before the accident." Lila traced patterns on his chest, her medical training unable to explain the profound healing she sensed occurring between them, something beyond physical recovery, touching places medicine couldn't reach. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked finally, voicing the question that hung between them. "I'm still your doctor. There are ethical considerations." "Then stop being my doctor," he suggested, brushing hair from her face with gentle fingers. "Transfer my case. There are other neurologists." Reality intruded on their bubble of intimacy. "Your progress is tied to my specific protocol. Changing doctors now could jeopardize your recovery." Ethan lifted her chin, meeting her troubled gaze. "Then we'll figure it out. Together. Because I'm not willing to pretend tonight didn't happen. Are you?" Lila's answer was another kiss, silent acknowledgement that some connections were too powerful to deny, regardless of the complications they created. Neither could have imagined how their lives would transform in the weeks to come, or the miracle already taking root inside her. The professional fallout came swiftly. 2 weeks after their night together, Lila made the difficult decision to transfer Ethan's case to her colleague, Dr. Marcus Reed. She continued to oversee his treatment protocol from a distance, reviewing his progress charts and suggesting adjustments while maintaining the fiction of professional detachment. Their personal relationship, however, deepened despite the complications. Weekends were spent at Ethan's estate, away from curious eyes and hospital gossip. In these private moments, they discovered each other beyond patient and doctor, beyond CEO and neurologist, just Ethan and Lila, building something neither had expected to find. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Ethan admitted one evening as they watched the sunset from his terrace. "After the accident, I assumed that part of my life was over." Lila rested her head against his shoulder. "Which part?" "All of it. Hope. Connection. Feeling like a whole man." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "You gave that back to me." 8 weeks after their first night together, Lila noticed changes in her body that her medical training couldn't allow her to ignore. Unusual fatigue, sensitivity to smells, and morning nausea that couldn't be explained away. A missed period followed by another confirmed what should have been impossible. She stared at the positive pregnancy test in her bathroom, mind racing through medical impossibilities. 3 specialists had confirmed Ethan's infertility. The trauma medication cocktail had been definitively linked to permanent reproductive damage. There was no medical explanation for what she was seeing. Yet the evidence was undeniable. When Ethan arrived for dinner that evening, he immediately sensed something had changed. "What's wrong?" he asked, wheeling himself into her apartment's living room. "You sounded strange on the phone." Lila sat across from him, hands clasped tightly. "I need to tell you something that's going to sound impossible." His expression grew concerned. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung between them, simple yet world-altering. Ethan stared at her, confusion evident. "That's not, I can't, the doctors were definitive about my condition." "I know." Lila met his gaze steadily. I've taken 3 tests. All positive. I haven't been with anyone else, Ethan. Not for over a year. Silence stretched between them as Ethan processed this information, his expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and something that looked remarkably like hope. Are you certain? He finally asked, his voice barely audible. Lila nodded. As certain as medical science allows. I've scheduled an appointment with my gynecologist tomorrow to confirm. I want to come with you, he said immediately. Are you sure? This is a lot to process. If you need time. Time is the last thing I need, Ethan interrupted, reaching for her hands. Do you understand what this means? If I'm truly the father, then everything the specialists told me was wrong. Everything. The gynecologist's confirmation the next day left no room for doubt. Not only was Lila approximately 8 weeks pregnant, but ultrasound revealed something that left both her and the doctor speechless. 3 distinct heartbeats. Triplets, Dr. Abrams announced, adjusting the ultrasound wand. All measuring perfectly for this stage. Ethan's grip on Lila's hand tightened, his eyes fixed on the screen where 3 tiny fluttering pulses confirmed what no medical expert had thought possible. The chances of this happening? Dr. Abrams began. Are scientifically impossible, Lila finished, her medical knowledge colliding with the undeniable evidence before her. Yet here we are. Back at Ethan's home that evening, they sat in stunned silence, the ultrasound images spread before them on the coffee table. 3 babies, Ethan whispered, his finger tracing the outline of the grainy images. 3 lives created from what was supposed to be impossible. Lila watched him, seeing emotions play across his face that she couldn't fully interpret. Are you okay with this? It's overwhelming, even without the miraculous circumstances. Ethan looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Okay with it? Lila, you've given me back everything I thought was lost forever. Walking again was my first miracle. This, he gestured at the ultrasound images, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. It won't be easy, she cautioned. Triplet pregnancies are high risk. And your recovery is still ongoing. We'll both face challenges. We'll face them together, Ethan insisted, a certainty in his voice that hadn't been there before. Move in with me. Let me take care of you while you're carrying our children. The offer was tempting, but Lila hesitated. What about my work? The research center, my patients. Bring your work here, he suggested. I'll convert the East Wing into a home office. Set up whatever equipment you need. Your research is too important to abandon. Lila smiled, touched by his understanding of what her work meant to her. You've changed so much from that bitter man I met in the hospital room. I had an excellent reason to change, he replied, reaching for her hand. I found something worth healing for. As the reality of their situation settled around them, new questions emerged. How would they explain this medical impossibility to colleagues? Would the pregnancy affect Lila's professional standing? What would this mean for Ethan's ongoing recovery? Yet beneath these practical concerns lay a current of wonder and joy that neither could deny. Their night of passion had done more than cross professional boundaries, it had somehow defied medical certainty, creating not just one life but 3 where none should have been possible. Neither could have predicted that their greatest challenges, and their greatest joy, still lay ahead. News of Lila's pregnancy spread through medical circles like wildfire. What began as professional concern about her relationship with a former patient quickly transformed into scientific fascination when details of Ethan's supposed infertility emerged. They're calling it the Cole miracle at the hospital, Lila told Ethan as she settled into his home during her 2nd trimester. Dr. Maxwell has requested permission to document the case for medical journals. Ethan looked up from the nursery plans he was reviewing. And what did you tell him? That our children aren't research subjects, she replied firmly. Though I admit, as a scientist, even I'm baffled by what's happened. The pregnancy progressed with its own set of challenges. By week 16, Lila's petite frame was already significantly altered by the 3 growing lives inside her. Her obstetrician, Dr. Naomi Franklin, specialized in high-risk multiple births and didn't mince words about the road ahead. Bed rest will become necessary sooner rather than later, Dr. Franklin explained during a checkup. With triplets, we typically aim for delivery between 32 and 34 weeks, depending on maternal health and fetal development. Nearly 2 months premature, Lila translated for Ethan, medical concern evident in her voice. That's standard protocol for multiples, Dr. Franklin assured them. The NICU team here is exceptional. We'll monitor closely throughout. As Lila's mobility decreased, Ethan's increased, a paradoxical exchange that wasn't lost on either of them. Under Dr. Reed's continued implementation of Lila's protocol, Ethan progressed to walking short distances with forearm crutches, his determination fueled by the approaching fatherhood that once seemed impossible. I want to be able to hold at least one of them while standing, he explained during a particularly grueling physical therapy session. I need to be stronger by the time they arrive. Their home transformed along with their bodies. The East Wing became Lila's research headquarters, allowing her to continue overseeing clinical trials remotely. 3 adjacent rooms were converted into a nursery suite with specialized equipment for multiple infants. The mansion's staff expanded to include a full-time nurse and household manager. Not everyone celebrated their unconventional happiness. The Hospital Ethics Committee launched an investigation into Lila's conduct, questioning the timeline of her relationship with Ethan. Colleagues who had once admired her groundbreaking work now whispered about professional boundaries crossed. They're threatening to revoke my research funding, Lila admitted one evening, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. The committee suggests my judgment may be compromised by personal entanglements. Ethan's response was immediate and decisive. Then we'll fund the research ourselves. I still have considerable resources and connections. Your work is too important to abandon because of outdated moral judgments. At 24 weeks, a routine ultrasound revealed potential complications. One of the triplets, baby B, showed signs of growth restriction. The placental blood flow isn't optimal, Dr. Franklin explained, pointing to areas on the monitor. It's not uncommon with multiples, but it requires careful monitoring. Lila was ordered to complete bed rest, her world narrowing to the confines of their bedroom and adjoining sitting area. Ethan adapted his schedule to be with her as much as possible, often working beside her bed, their laptops creating a bridge between their separate professional worlds. I never expected this when I took your case, Lila mused one afternoon, her hand resting on her rounded abdomen where tiny feet kicked persistently. I thought I was helping you rebuild your life, not completely reshaping mine. Ethan set aside his tablet and moved from his chair to the edge of her bed. Do you regret it? Any of it? She considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. I regret the professional complications. I regret not being able to complete your treatment personally. Her eyes met his. But this? Us? The babies? No. Some journeys can't be predicted or planned, only embraced. At 28 weeks, Lila awoke to sharp pains and dampness. Her water had broken far too early, triggering a carefully choreographed emergency response. Ethan's driver rushed them to the hospital while Dr. Franklin assembled her team. We'll try to delay delivery, the doctor assured them in the hospital room now filled with monitoring equipment. Every additional day matters for lung development. Medications temporarily halted Lila's contractions, buying precious time. For 72 hours, she remained in limbo, her body fighting to keep the babies safely inside while medical interventions worked to support this goal. Ethan never left her side, sleeping in a chair pulled close to her bed, his progress evident in how he moved around the hospital room with minimal assistance. His physical transformation mirrored the inner strength that had developed through their shared journey. "Talk to them," Lila urged during a particularly difficult night when monitors showed increased fetal distress. "They respond to your voice." Ethan carefully positioned himself next to her bed, his hand gently resting on her stomach. "Hey there, little ones," he began, his voice soft but clear. "We need you to stay put a bit longer. The world's waiting for you, but not quite yet, okay? Your mom and I have so many plans for you." As if in response, the monitoring equipment registered calmer heartbeats, the crisis temporarily abated. "See," Lila whispered, squeezing his hand. "They already know their father." The moment of peace was fleeting. By dawn, it became clear that delivery could no longer be delayed. As medical staff prepared Lila for an emergency C-section, fear and hope intermingled in the sterile hospital air. "I'll be right there with you," Ethan promised as they wheeled her toward the operating room, his fingers interlaced with hers. "I know," she replied with remarkable calm. "We've overcome impossible odds already. We'll face this together too." Neither fully understood just how much strength that promise would require in the hours ahead. The operating room buzzed with controlled urgency. A team of specialists assembled for the high-risk delivery, neonatologists, respiratory therapists, and NICU nurses standing ready as Dr. Franklin performed the C-section with practiced precision. Ethan sat beside Lila's head, a surgical mask covering the lower half of his face, his eyes revealing both terror and determination. He gripped her hand tightly, the crutch he still needed for stability leaning against his chair. "You're doing great," he whispered as Dr. Franklin announced she was reaching the first baby. At 29 weeks gestation, baby A emerged, a tiny girl weighing just 2 pounds, 3 ounces. Her cry, barely audible but present, filled the room with its miraculous sound before the neonatal team whisked her to a warming station. "She's breathing on her own," called out the neonatologist, her voice carrying notes of pleased surprise. "Good color, responsive." Baby B followed moments later, a boy even smaller than his sister at 1 pound, 12 ounces. His silence prompted immediate intervention, a breathing tube quickly inserted by steady hands. "Lungs need support, but heartbeat is strong," reported the doctor working on him. Baby C, another girl, arrived last, the largest at 2 pounds, 5 ounces, with a robust cry that belied her premature state. "3 beautiful babies," Dr. Franklin announced, her eyes crinkling above her mask as she worked to complete the surgery. "All doing remarkably well considering their gestation." Ethan stood shakily, determined to glimpse each child before they were transferred to the NICU. The medical team made space for him, recognizing the extraordinary journey that had led to this moment. "They're perfect," he whispered, tears tracking freely down his face as he looked at their tiny, translucent forms connected to machines that would help them survive their too early arrival. Lila, groggy but alert, reached for his hand. "Go with them. Don't let them be alone." The next 12 hours became a blur of medical updates, emotional highs and devastating lows. While the girls showed remarkable stability for their gestational age, baby B, whom they named Noah, struggled with respiratory distress syndrome, his underdeveloped lungs fighting against impossible odds. "The first 72 hours are critical," explained Dr. Kumar, the lead neonatologist, as Ethan navigated the NICU in his wheelchair, conserving strength for the marathon ahead. "But I've seen smaller babies thrive. They're fighters, these little ones." Lila joined them the following day, her recovery bed wheeled directly to the NICU. Despite her medical training, nothing had prepared her for the emotional impact of seeing her children, Ava, Noah, and Grace, in incubators, their tiny bodies connected to monitors and tubes. "Their very existence defies medical explanation," she whispered to Ethan as they watched Noah's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance. "After everything the specialists said about your condition, Maybe some miracles don't need scientific explanation, Ethan replied, his hand steady on her shoulder. Days stretched into weeks. The hospital became their second home, with Ethan and Lila establishing a rotation that ensured at least one parent remained with the babies at all times. They learned medical terminology they never wanted to know: bradycardia episodes, apnea of prematurity, intraventricular hemorrhage risks. 3 weeks after birth, Noah faced a critical setback, a pulmonary infection that threatened his already compromised lungs. "We're adjusting his antibiotics," Dr. Kumar informed them during a midnight consultation. "The next 24 hours will tell us if he's responding." That night, alone in the family waiting room, Ethan's physical and emotional strength finally broke. Tears came without warning, his body shaking with the force of his fear. "I can't lose him," he confessed when Lila found him there. "I can't lose any of them. Not after everything." Lila knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. "Noah has your determination," she said firmly. "The same determination that helped you stand again when everyone said it was impossible. He's not giving up, and neither are we." By morning, Noah's condition stabilized, the first step in what would be a long recovery. The girls continued to thrive, gaining weight steadily and requiring progressively less respiratory support. At 6 weeks old, Ava became the first to graduate from her incubator to an open crib, followed 3 days later by Grace. Noah remained the smallest, but his improvement accelerated, surprising even the veteran NICU staff with his resilience. Their medical miracle didn't go unnoticed. News outlets picked up the story: a paralyzed, infertile CEO defying medical odds to father triplets with the neurologist who helped him walk again. Privacy became nearly impossible as reporters camped outside the hospital, hungry for details. "I've received calls from 3 major research centers," Lila told Ethan one evening as they sat beside the baby's cribs. "They want to study your case, how you regained fertility despite the medication damage." "And what did you tell them?" Ethan asked, gently stroking Grace's tiny hand through the porthole of her incubator. "That some questions might remain unanswered," she replied with a small smile. "At least for now." The hospital ethics investigation quietly closed, unable to proceed against the backdrop of what many were calling a medical phenomenon. Lila's research funding was reinstated with an apology from the board. At exactly 10 weeks after birth, the date they would have reached full term had the pregnancy continued, all 3 babies were deemed strong enough to go home. The day of discharge brought a flurry of activity as nurses who had become like family helped prepare the infants for transport. "Remember, they'll still need supplemental oxygen for Noah," instructed the discharge nurse. "And all 3 should be monitored for the first few months." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Kumar stopped by for a final visit. "In 30 years of neonatology, I've never seen triplets born at 29 weeks do this well," she admitted. "You've got 3 fighters there." Ethan, now walking with a single cane, stood tall beside Lila as they prepared to bring their children home. "They come by it honestly," he said, his voice steady with newfound confidence. "Some things really are written in the stars, not medical textbooks." Bringing 3 premature infants home transformed Ethan's mansion from a showcase of wealth into a functional family headquarters. The meticulously designed nursery suite now operated as a miniature NICU, complete with monitoring equipment, oxygen tanks for Noah, and a rotation of specialized nurses for the first month. "Never thought I'd have medical personnel outnumbering household staff," Ethan remarked as he carefully fed Ava her midnight bottle, the tiny girl's blue eyes, so like his own, studying his face with newborn intensity. "Temporary arrangement," Lila assured him, simultaneously monitoring Noah's oxygen levels while cradling Grace against her shoulder. "They're gaining strength daily." Those early weeks blurred into an exhausting rhythm of feedings, medical checks, and precious moments of connection. Sleep became a luxury neither parent could afford, yet both discovered reservoirs of strength they hadn't known they possessed. Noah's progress continued to astonish his doctors. By 4 months actual age, 1 month corrected, he no longer required supplemental oxygen. The girls thrived even more dramatically, quickly catching up to typical developmental milestones despite their premature start. Ethan's physical recovery accelerated alongside his children's growth. The motivation to be fully present for his family drove him to extend his therapy sessions and push beyond previously accepted limitations. By the triplets' 6-month birthday, he could walk unassisted for short distances, using a cane only for longer periods on his feet. Remember when you couldn't feel anything below your knees? Lila marveled one evening, watching him pace the nursery floor with Noah against his shoulder, soothing the fussy infant with gentle bounces. "Feels like another lifetime," Ethan replied, his movements smooth and confident. Another person entirely. Their professional lives adapted to their new reality. Lila converted part of the home into a research center, conducting virtual consultations and directing her neural regeneration studies remotely. Her case studies, carefully anonymized versions of Ethan's treatment, revolutionized approaches to spinal cord injuries across the medical community. Ethan, too, found renewed purpose. Rather than fight to reclaim his position at Cole Enterprises, he established a foundation focusing on accessibility innovation and spinal injury research. The irony wasn't lost on him. His greatest professional success emerged from what had once seemed his ultimate defeat. "The board meeting that voted me out was the best thing that ever happened to me," he confessed to Lila on the anniversary of his accident. "It freed me to find what actually matters." When the triplets reached their first birthday, celebrating with 3 tiny cakes and an intimate gathering of the medical professionals who had become family, Ethan had another surprise planned. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, he led Lila to the garden pavilion where dinner awaited. The babies were settled with their nurses for the evening, allowing a rare moment of privacy. "You've given me more than I ever thought possible," Ethan began, his movements steady as he lowered himself to one knee before her. "You helped me walk again, believe in myself again. You gave me 3 perfect children when every specialist said it was impossible." Lila watched him with widening eyes as he produced a ring, a striking emerald surrounded by diamonds. "Green for new beginnings," he explained, voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "Marry me, Lila. Make our family complete." Her answer came without hesitation, arms wrapping around him as they both knelt in the garden, their embrace symbolizing how far they'd traveled from doctor and patient to equal partners in an extraordinary journey. They married 3 months later in that same garden, the triplets dressed in matching outfits serving as honorary members of the wedding party. Dr. Reed, who had continued Ethan's treatment, stood as best man. Dr. Franklin, who had delivered the babies, served as matron of honor. Life settled into a new normal, challenging yet filled with joy that outweighed every difficulty. The triplets grew into active toddlers, each developing distinct personalities that amazed and amused their parents daily. Ava emerged as the determined leader, her expressions mirroring Ethan's focused intensity. Grace developed Lila's analytical curiosity, studying everything with thoughtful concentration. And Noah, once the most fragile, blossomed into a joyful child whose infectious laughter filled their home. On the 3rd anniversary of their first meeting, Lila found Ethan in his study, reviewing foundation proposals. "Do you ever think about how unlikely all this is?" she asked, gesturing to the family photos that now dominated his once austere workspace. "The statistical probability of everything that happened, your recovery, the triplets, all of it, is essentially 0. Ethan considered this, the businessman in him appreciating the numerical assessment. "Yet here we are, defying statistics." He pulled her gently onto his lap, his legs, once without feeling, now strong enough to support them both. "Perhaps some forces are stronger than medical certainty." The scientist in me struggles with that explanation, Lila admitted with a smile. And the mother? The wife? What do they think? He asked, brushing his lips against her forehead. Her answer came as the sound of small feet approached, 3 children calling for their parents with excited voices. They think some questions don't need answers, she replied, rising to welcome the whirlwind of children bursting through the door. Some miracles only need to be lived. As Ethan stood to embrace his family, standing tall without assistance, surrounded by the children medical science claimed could never exist, he silently agreed. The journey from broken CEO to complete man hadn't followed any expected path, but had led exactly where he was meant to be. In the end, his greatest miracle wasn't regaining his ability to walk, or even becoming a father against impossible odds. It was finding the courage to open his heart to healing, in all its unexpected forms. If this story of unexpected healing and miraculous love touched your heart, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed something medical science couldn't explain? A moment where love seemed to heal what medicine couldn't? Subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips for more extraordinary stories that remind us how love transforms lives in unexpected ways. Turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly episodes featuring incredible journeys of healing, hope, and second chances. Join our family of believers in the power of love to create miracles. Until next time, remember that some questions don't need answers, some miracles only need to be lived.